Animatron. Now, a puppet or similar figure that is animated by means of electromechanical devices. An animatronic figure. For as long as I can remember, machines have always fascinated me. How do they work? What do they do? I'd often take apart different devices to understand what was going on inside. They intrigue me in a way I just can't explain. And the machines that fascinate me the most are animatronics. They are utterly fascinating. How did we, as a society, create machines that manage to mimic life? Why did we dedicate time to this endeavor? What are audio-animatronics?
Audio-Animatronics?
Right, Audio-Animatronics.
Yes, thank you, Walt. Audio-animatronics are a subset of robots specifically designed for entertainment purposes. Animatronics are used in a variety of industries, including theme parks and movies. I can almost guarantee you that you've seen one before in your life, whether it be the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, the pirates in that one ride at Disneyland, or that creepy witch Home Depot puts out every fall to traumatize millions of little children. Animatronics are everywhere. However, when did they first come into being? In order to answer that, we'll need to answer a few different questions first. What is considered an animatronic? This question is surprisingly difficult to answer. When Walt Disney first coined the term back in the 1960s, he did so to express an extension of animation. Animatronics. Animated electronics. Audio was added as a prefix to the term to indicate machines that could talk and sing. Based on his reasoning, we can get a pretty good working definition here. Audio animatronics, electronic machines that can make noise and replicate life through movement. Based on this possible definition, the Art of Animatronics could have started back in the 1960s. However, if you remove the electronic from our definition, then another category of machines fits our description. Automatons. Now, automatons are devices that fit into a weird kind of category because the term could be used to describe almost every single machine that exists. Merriam-Webster defines automaton as a machine or control mechanism designed to follow automatically a predetermined sequence of operations or respond to encoded instructions. And honestly, that basically describes just about every device that we've created right up until now. What I want to focus on, though, is specifically the subset of automatons that have attempted to replicate life. As it turns out, humans have always been fascinated with replicating life through machines. The ancient Greeks have legends of mechanical beasts that terrorize the countryside. Daedalus, the mythic inventor who created the labyrinth for the Minotaur, was alleged to have created stone statues that could move and breathe. Hero of Alexandria was a prolific inventor who created a water basin with metallic singing birds. We have even recreated some of his automata from this time, including a mini theater replicating one of the religious rites to Dionysus. This device worked using a complex method of falling weights and grain. Back in Jerusalem, King Solomon had a throne created where mechanical animals would help him step up into his throne. An eagle would crown him, and then the mechanical zoo would let out their animals' roars and screeches. It truly was a mythic time for automatons. Now, the myth continues well into the Middle Ages, a time of disinformation and superstitious beliefs. However, it would appear that it was also a time of engineering advancement in the Middle East. During the 18th century, the city of Baghdad supposedly had wind-powered horsemen that would attack invaders. There was also a Byzantine emperor who had a throne room thronged by mechanical roaring lions, and a golden tree filled with singing metallic birds. Ibn al-Razaz al-Jazari wrote the Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices, where he describes many of his inventions, including a full orchestra. Now, this orchestra sat in a boat and was powered entirely by falling water. While many of these devices and their stories were still mythic in their accomplishments, we also started having more stories of more realistic machines that most likely existed. These stories would have likely delighted and stirred the imaginations of many inventors from the Renaissance. During this era, great minds emerged. Leonardo da Vinci, arguably one of the greatest minds of his time, had at one point created a lion automaton for King Louis XII. Johannes Müller von Königsberg was a German inventor who was prolific at making automata birds that could fly. Now, very few of these automata from this time survive to this day. However, the most notable one would be Juanelo Torriano's Clockwork friar from the 16th century, which is now being held at the Smithsonian. This friar can walk, hit its chest, and raise a set of rosaries to its lip in prayer. We can also see from this figure an important transition from automatas from the past to this era. Clockworks. The reliance on the steady rhythm of gears and springs over the power of more natural energy, such as gravity and water, was used prolifically during this era of creation. This would drastically change how machines would be designed, especially in the 17th and 18th centuries. French inventor Jacques de Vaucanson's automata from this era are truly amazing. Two of his most inspiring creations would be the digesting duck and the flute player. Now, the digesting duck could take corn that was fed to it, and then it would digest it into a sort of excrement. It could also flap its wings, and it would turn its head and quack. And the flute player was a figure of a shepherd who could play 12 different songs on its flute. It was reported that it played the instrument beautifully. Now, this came as a shock, as the flute is one of the more difficult instruments to perfect, as it requires precision involving the airflow, finger placement, and movements of lips. In the 18th century, Pierre Jacques Juros was a Swiss-born watchmaker from Spain who would often add automatons to his watches, which led up to his three most impressive automatons being presented in 1774: the musician, the draftsman, and the rider. Now, the musician was an automata of a female organist who could play the instrument, and then as soon as she was done with her performance, she would stand up and give a little bow. The draftsman could draw 4 different pictures, and the rider could write any word the user desired. This figure was one of the first fully programmable machines. At the same time, a German inventor named Wolfgang von Kempelen presented the world his masterpiece, the Mechanical Turk. The Turk, as it's more commonly known as, was an incredible piece of machinery that could play, and most of the time win, games of chess. The Turk became a touring sensation, taking on some of the most famous minds of the time, such as Benjamin Franklin. Here was a machine that could think and outwit most humans in the 1700s. Or was it? You see, the Turk couldn't actually think. Hidden in the base of the Turk was a small compartment where a person could sit. In front of him was a chessboard, which had pinpricks of light coming in from the chessboard that was sitting right above it. Now, the Turk was still an impressive bit of machinery, which was able to precisely pick up chess pieces and move them across the board. But the true genius of the Turk would be whichever chessmaster was controlling it in the base. Now, what's extremely important to remember is that these inventors not only revolutionized automata, but they also helped revolutionize the world through providing tools essential for the Industrial Revolution. Vaucanson was famous for inventing pooping ducks. His real contribution to history was the invention of the lathe, a tool which resulted in the ability to mass-produce precision parts. During this era, innovations came in quickly enough that soon there was a proliferation of automata throughout Europe. Clockwork toys started showing up from this time, from trains and boats to firefighters and jump roping girls. It became popular to buy bird cages housing mechanical whistling birds. All of this culminated in the 1938 World's Fair with Elektro. The Elektro was a mechanical robot who could take in vocal commands and would react accordingly. He could talk, walk, and most importantly, smoke a cigarette. Now, reportedly, that last action required his gears to be cleaned of the tar and caused at least one of his maintenance men to quit smoking. Now, Elektro worked as an extension of the automata of years past, while acting as a bridge towards Disney's animatronics. His internal workings were mechanics controlled by electrical signals, and his input could recognize the different tones of human speech to activate different actions. A few years later, in the 1940s, Elektro gained a new companion, Robot's best friend, Sparko, the mechanical dog. Now, we found ourselves looking back at Walt Disney and his contributions towards automation. However, before the singing birds and dancing ghosts of Disneyland, there was a passion project known as Disneylandia. Disneylandia was a project Walt pursued consisting of many dioramas of automatons that would perform different actions, including a tap dancing figure named the Dancing Man. When he learned the limitations of the technology, Walt ultimately decided against the endeavor of producing several more dioramas for a traveling show. One of the engineers who helped on the project, Roger Brogy, suggested to Walt that he would get a much more realistic result if the 9-inch figures were enlarged. This way, they could house the mechanisms required for movement. Years later, Walt would return towards the ideas of this failed project as he designed attractions for his new amusement park, Disneyland. And around the same time, the 1964 New York World's Fair needed innovative attractions, and many companies turned towards Disney to provide them. Walt took this opportunity to create many of his pet projects and bring them to life. For the World's Fair, Disney produced It's a Small World, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, The Enchanted Tiki Room, and the Carousel of Progress. It's a Small World is a boat ride through several displays of the creepiest animatronic dolls ever, singing the most annoying earworm of all time. Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln is the animatronic version of Lincoln delivering the Gettysburg Address. And the Enchanted Tiki Room is a room show full of singing birds and tiki statues. The Carousel of Progress was a show that followed a family through the history of machines and a look towards the future. Now, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln and the Enchanted Tiki Room are of particular interest, as these two attractions pushed a lot of change towards how mechanical life was produced. The Enchanted Tiki Room taught these engineers how to effectively program the animatronics in a scene, and they were easier to design in terms of replicating life. This show taught the Imagineers, as they would become to know, many important basics for animatronics. Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln was a bit more difficult, as replicating human life has always been. Now, this was the most complex of the shows for the 1964 World's Fair, and this was obvious because issue after issue would keep popping up. Sometimes Lincoln's face would tear off. Other times, he was leaking pneumatic oil all over the place, which was red. The project was a mess, but the end result was worth it, as the movements of the animatronic were so lifelike that it had many guests fooled when it first premiered. So, when do animatronics first appear? Now, we could stick with the definition we determined earlier in the video: electronic machines that can make noise and replicate life through movement. And that would point us back directly towards Elektro from 1938. But I'd argue that animatronics go beyond that definition. A better definition would be this: mechanical machines that replicate life and inspire our imaginations. With that in mind, we can trace animatronics all the way back to the 17th and 18th century, especially with Vaucanson's Automatons. Now, naturally, this raises the question of how far back we can really trace animatronics. Take Hero's Automatons in ancient Greece, for example. His machines mimicked life in clever ways. We have working replicas of several of these devices today, including his miniature theater, and his creations may have well inspired inventors such as Da Vinci. His accomplishments were remarkable, but the 17th century marked a turning point. Vaucanson's work, along with his invention of the lathe, led to a wave of new automata. Now, this was just before the Industrial Revolution and inspired many clockmakers to make their own mechanical wonders. Vaucanson's automata and several others from this era toured across Europe and fascinated millions during their time. For over 2,000 years, inventors have dreamed of replicating life, creating machines that inspire both awe and curiosity. From the early automata of ancient Greece to lifelike animatronics found today in Disneyland, these figures have always provoked us to think about what's possible. As we continue to build upon what came before us, it's important to honor those who made this all possible. And next time you're at Disneyland watching the singing pirates, remember just how long it took to make that magic happen. And then sing along extra loud for those that paved the way. After all, What better way to honor the past than by keeping the magic alive?